Welcome to Concrete Block, the podcast where we dive into the latest news and trends from around the world. We're starting off with a story that's been making waves in international politics. It appears that French President Emmanuel Macron has been building a relationship with China, one that could have significant implications for global power dynamics. According to reports, Macron's recent trip to China was more than just a diplomatic visit. It was a strategic move to secure France's position on the world stage. Macron's meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping came after a tumultuous period in French politics, marked by protests and unrest in several of its overseas territories, including New Caledonia. The island, which is home to significant nickel deposits, has been a point of contention between France and the indigenous Kanak population. However, it seems that China's interest in the region's resources may have played a role in easing tensions. China is the largest purchaser of New Caledonian nickel and has been actively seeking to expand its influence in the Pacific. By building a relationship with Macron, China may be able to secure a stable supply of this critical mineral, which is essential for many modern technologies. In return, France may gain a powerful ally in its efforts to maintain its position as a global player. This development has significant implications for the United States and the European Union, both of which have been watching China's growing influence with concern. As France appears to be shifting its allegiances, it remains to be seen how this will affect the balance of power in international relations. Macron's legacy is likely to be shaped by this move, and it will be interesting to see how his relationship with China evolves in the coming years. Will this be a bold new chapter in French foreign policy, or a misstep that will have far-reaching consequences? We'll be right back with more of today's top news on Concrete Block. Welcome back to Concrete Block. We're diving into a complex and developing story that's unfolding in the Caribbean. The United States has indicted former Cuban President Raúl Castro on murder charges related to the 1996 downing of civilian planes flown by Miami-based exiles. This move has significant implications for US-Cuba relations, which have been strained for decades. The indictment comes as Cuba faces severe economic challenges, including blackouts and food shortages, due in part to a US blockade that has choked off fuel shipments to the island. The situation has sparked a strong response from Russia, which has vowed to provide active support to Cuba and expressed total solidarity with the island nation. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova condemned U.S. intimidation, unilateral restrictive measures, threats, and blackmail against Cuba, calling it a cynical embodiment of a revived Monroe Doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine was a 19th-century policy that asserted U.S. influence over the Americas, and its revival has significant implications for regional politics. The U.S. has also deployed an aircraft carrier strike group to the Caribbean, fueling speculation about potential military action against Cuba. President Donald Trump has threatened a friendly takeover of the island if authorities in Havana do not undertake sweeping political and economic reforms that would favor the United States. It's essential to consider multiple perspectives on this issue. While some argue that the U.S. is justified in its actions, given concerns about human rights and democracy in Cuba, others see the moves as an attempt to exert control over a sovereign nation. The Cuban government has long maintained that it will not be intimidated by U.S. threats and will continue to chart its own course. As this story continues to unfold, we'll be keeping a close eye on developments and bringing you updates and analysis. The situation in Cuba is complex, with many stakeholders and interests at play. We'll strive to provide a balanced view, considering the perspectives of all parties involved. Welcome back to Concrete Block. As we wrap up today's show, we're taking a closer look at the escalating tensions between the United States and Cuba. The U.S. has recently charged Cuba's former leader Raúl Castro with murder in connection with the 1996 downing of 2 planes. This development has sparked concerns about potential military action, with many Cubans preparing for the worst. We've spoken to residents in Havana who are already struggling with the effects of fuel shortages and power outages. Ana Rosa Romero, a widow in her 70s, told us that she barely leaves her apartment due to the uncertainty of when the power will go out, making it difficult for her to access basic necessities like water and food. Others, like Juana Garcia, are trying to care for elderly and bedridden residents in their buildings, often without the aid of functioning elevators or electricity. Meanwhile, the Cuban government has denounced the charges against Raúl Castro as a vile lie and is organizing marches in his defense. Orlando Diaz, a foreman at a construction site in Havana, echoed this sentiment, saying that the charges are a pretext for potential U.S. aggression. However, he also expressed confidence that Cubans will stand strong in the face of any challenges, citing the country's history of resilience. As the situation continues to unfold, it's essential to consider the complexities and nuances at play. The U.S.-Cuba relationship is multifaceted, with a long history of tensions and conflicts. While some argue that the charges against Raúl Castro are justified, others see them as a politically motivated move. It's crucial to approach this story with a critical eye, recognizing the diverse perspectives and interests involved. As we strive to provide balanced and accurate information, we must also acknowledge the human impact of these events on the people of Cuba and beyond. That's all for today's Concrete Block. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, stay informed.